So continuing on with the topic of Namarupa. So on Sunday and Monday, Linda and I spoke about the most common translation of that Pali word that appears in a couple of those lists. And the most common translation, maybe even the most accurate one, is name and form. However, there is another translation, and that is body mind, without an and in the middle. It's not body and mind. It's Namarupa, one word. So it really speaks to the fact that there's really no separation between the two. And even if I say the words are constantly interacting, that actually speaks to a separation between the two. Our English language, or maybe my conditioning, our conditioning, really does keep separating body-mind into body and mind. So I went to Wikipedia to see how they translated Namarupa, and I found this translation. This term, and this was the first translation, not the later one. This term is used in Buddhism to refer to the constituents of a living being. Nama refers to the mental, and Rupa refers to the physical. The Buddhist Nama and Rupa are mutually dependent and not separable. As Namarupa, they designate an individual being. So in our teaching, we've come to use the word for this body-mind, one word. And again, there is this deep habit, and I'll slip into it over and over and over again, going back to some languaging, but also more importantly, a conceptualization of there is the body and there is the mind, and they are separate. They interact, but they are separate. This conditioning goes deep. And, it goes, I've heard it said that it goes back to Descartes, who set up this dualism, which is the view that the mind and body both exist as separate entities. And apparently he had some idea of where they came together in this particular place in the body. So I'm going to go to my glossary now. And I wrote my glossary many years ago now. And in my glossary, I hyphenated it, body-mind. But I no longer think of this word as hyphenated. Again, I think of it as one word, as Namarupa as one word. And it really helps as I change my language about it, because when I use body-mind rather than body/mind, it seems to break down the dualism a bit. However, body-mind is not a legitimate word in the English language. At least it's not recognized by my spell check. But back to the glossary. So how I define body-mind in the glossary is a term encompassing the whole person. And apparently this comes from the Free Dictionary. So apparently it is a word in some dictionaries, at least the hyphenated version. The body and mind are inseparable. That's why we use one hyphenated word. When describing experience, sometimes it's easier to perceive what's going on in either the body or the mind. This is ultimately false, but a sometimes useful dichotomy. So I agree with that part, the latter part of the definition now. Even though it's false, it sometimes can be useful to separate the two, to sort of get more languaging about what's going on, say, in the body, but knowing perhaps that it's inseparable from the mind or the mental aspects, or the emotional. So this sent me on a little excursion to learn more about hyphens themselves, and so I found this definition of a hyphen, or when to use a hyphen. Use a hyphen to form a single idea from two or more words. Example, socioeconomic. And whenever its omission would change the meaning of a phrase. Hyphenated compound words are multi-word terms with a hyphen or hyphens between component words. But here's the interesting part. Over time, many hyphenated compounds become closed compounds. For example, teenager used to be teen-ager. That's a funny word, ager. But later on became teenager, one word. So that's what happened to me regarding body-mind. Over time, it became body-mind. Somewhat intentional as it became more and more absurd. How could I separate the two? How is it even possible that they're separate? Stop making any sense. Of course, still my dictionary continues not to recognize body-mind. Maybe it will after a while. So then I jumped, and this might seem like a jump, but this is how my mind jumped, to another interesting aspect of hyphenation that I've been aware of lately. Most of the words that I type in, and I actually do a lot of my thinking by typing into my computer, it's become that way, that begin with self, suggest that I use a hyphen rather than separate out the words. Self-awareness, self-esteem, self-determination, self-development, self-understanding, and on it goes. You probably can add in some more words there. And when I try to write them without the hyphenation, I get this message saying, possible word choice error. I thought that was sort of interesting. So it's really, this built-in dictionary is really, in my computer, is really telling me, you better hyphenate those words when self precedes it. So maybe I feel okay about it because it seems to speak to a key Dharma teaching that, for example, awareness, esteem, development, understanding do seem to be inextricably tied to our sense of self. So as I reflect back on this talk, I realize that a large part of it's been about how our concepts are formed by our language and how our language can change how we think about things. And that really brings us to the last section of what we do at the Daily Online and what we do at most all of our meditation events, which is we form language for what's gone on. And we see perhaps more about how we're thinking about what we're languaging. Back to Namarupa. Again, one word in the Pali language. When translated as body-mind, they speak to the inseparability of the two, not even separable by a hyphen. So I will end the talk there, and we'll sit with our body minds.